I woke up to the sound of birdsong filtering through the cracked window, the air of my small, dusty bedroom tasting faintly of damp earth and mildew. The memory of my previous life clung to me like a shadow, sharp and bitter, and for a moment I couldn't distinguish whether the tears on my cheeks were from grief, relief, or the strange thrill of starting over. 47 years of marriage had taught me that bitterness can be buried deep beneath polite smiles, beneath daily routines and the suffocating weight of obligations. And yet here I was, reborn into the same world, the same town, with all the mistakes and humiliations of my past life etched in my mind like scars I could not erase. The moment I opened my eyes, I knew that this second chance was the only weapon I had, the only promise that my suffering could be redirected into something resembling justice or, better yet, vengeance. Victor Carlton, my husband in that past life, had been the perfect actor. A man of polished charm and public respect, he wore his reputation like armor, and beneath it hid a calculating, cold, unyielding core. For decades, I had lived under his scrutiny, catering to his whims, treading lightly so as not to provoke his explosive temper. And Lily Carlton, my so-called friend, the woman I had trusted more than anyone in my youth, had been the dagger in my heart. She had smiled at me while secretly undermining my every move, whispering poison into Victor's ears, and plotting to replace me in every role I held: wife, mother, manager, confidant. I could still remember the exact moment in our old home when I realized they had succeeded. Victor, looking at me with calculated disdain, told me I had ruined his life and that my daughter deserved someone better, someone who could give her what I never would. And just like that, the walls of my carefully constructed world crumbled. My daughter's eyes mirrored confusion and sorrow, but no longer warmth or trust. The betrayal of my own flesh and blood cut deeper than anything Victor or Lily could have done. The rebirth was both cruel and merciful. I woke in the same town, 20 years younger, with knowledge of their schemes and the bitter certainty of what awaited me if I followed the same submissive path. This time I would not cower. I would not give Victor the satisfaction of controlling my life, my time, or my daughter's future. I sat up in bed, feeling the familiar ache of determination spread through my bones, and whispered to the empty room, "This time, everything changes. This time I decide the outcome." The first order of business was to re-establish my independence, to secure financial leverage before Victor or Lily could sense my intentions. I remembered the small investments Victor had made, the offshore accounts, the fragile partnerships he relied upon. I also remembered Marcus, the young, ambitious lawyer I had once dismissed, who had watched everything unfold silently, gathering knowledge and patience until the right moment arrived. I began by carefully observing my past life's timeline, identifying the precise moments when Victor and Lily had overreached, the fractures they had caused in family, business, and law. I started small, enrolling in night school, gaining basic legal and financial literacy, quietly reclaiming my self-worth with the satisfaction of knowing that every lecture, every study session, was a step toward the reckoning that would come. I found work at a small, reputable law office in the city, under the mentorship of a woman who reminded me of the discipline and quiet strength my father had always admired. Each contract I reviewed, each case I observed, was an echo of my past life's failures and the knowledge I now carried, a map toward undoing the ruin Victor had inflicted. I avoided him entirely at first, letting him continue his life of careless arrogance, confident that in time, his own hubris would betray him. Meanwhile, Lily Carlton had grown careless too. I learned of her mismanagement of Victor's family estate, the subtle embezzlements, the secretive investments she thought no one would notice. She moved through the social circles with her practiced charm, believing she was untouchable. But I had the knowledge of her weaknesses, the precise points where her ambition outweighed her prudence. Slowly, methodically, I began planting the seeds of their downfall. I reached out to former business partners, reminding them of debts unpaid, contracts breached, and ethical violations they had overlooked in my absence. I traced Victor's offshore funds, documented his indiscretions, and began quietly building my own network of allies, including Marcus, who now recognized that my rise was inevitable, and was willing to lend his considerable legal skills to ensure the plan succeeded. My daughter, once distant and resentful, became the keystone of my strategy. I approached her carefully, not as a disciplinarian, not as a victim, but as a guide who had already walked the treacherous path they wanted to force her onto. She listened, hesitant at first, but gradually the truth of Victor and Lily's duplicity became undeniable, reflected in my calm confidence and the careful evidence I had amassed. I taught her to spot the subtle manipulations, the whispered lies, the staged coincidences that Victor and Lily relied on to maintain the illusion of control. And with each lesson, I watched the wall of mistrust between us crumble, replaced by a shared resolve to reclaim what had been stolen. Our dignity, our future, and the family legacy that had been tainted by greed and betrayal. When the time came to act, I struck with precision. I confronted Victor first, in the very boardroom where he had humiliated me decades ago, surrounded by partners and associates who had long suspected the cracks in his empire, but lacked proof. I presented meticulous records of financial misappropriations, of secret dealings with Lily, of contractual breaches that would see his reputation and holdings collapse under scrutiny. His face, once confident and mocking, drained of color as he realized the depth of my preparations. Every alibi he had counted on had been dismantled. Every ally he had trusted quietly swayed by my strategic disclosures. Lily's calls went unanswered, her own schemes unraveling as colleagues questioned her judgment and integrity. Marcus coordinated the legal assault, ensuring that each document, each deposition, and each financial report would carry the weight of indisputable authority. We forced Victor and Lily into a corner where no charm, no influence could rescue them. They attempted to negotiate, to salvage fragments of their fortune, but the network I had quietly built over months, lawyers, business partners, former confidants, had closed every door. Their empire, once so imposing, began to fracture publicly, sending shockwaves through the circles they had once dominated. Investors pulled out, the media began to sniff scandal, and the carefully maintained facade of domestic bliss crumbled completely. Throughout it all, I remained calm, almost detached, as though watching a play I had scripted long before. My daughter, now fully aligned with me, stood at my side, her own confidence grown from observing my unwavering focus. When Victor finally fell to his knees, reduced to bargaining for favors and pleading for leniency, I saw clearly that revenge was not a single act of vindictive cruelty, but the quiet accumulation of discipline, knowledge, and patience, deployed with unwavering precision. Lily, meanwhile, could only stare, her charm useless, her whispers meaningless in the face of the evidence and the strategic advantage we now held. The final act came quietly, without drama, but with complete authority. I orchestrated the transfer of the remaining family fortune into accounts controlled jointly by my daughter and me, with conditions ensuring that neither Victor nor Lily could access it without legal oversight. Their attempts to interfere were predictably futile, their protests drowned by contracts, legal clauses, and the inevitability of exposure. I watched them leave the courthouse that day, faces pale and unrecognizable, a mirror of the years of arrogance they had wielded over others. For the first time in decades, I felt an unshakable peace settle over me, a sense of closure that no marriage, no betrayal, and no manipulation could ever have afforded me in my first life. In the weeks that followed, I rebuilt what had been lost. My daughter and I established a new enterprise, small at first but guided by ethics, discipline, and diligence. The public scandal of Victor and Lily's downfall served as a cautionary tale to those who believed charm could replace integrity, while I reveled privately in the knowledge that I had rewritten history not through violence, but through wisdom, patience, and unwavering resolve. Each morning, I woke to a life I had carved for myself, free from the shadows of my past, rich not just in wealth but in knowledge, dignity, and the renewed bond with my daughter. And at night, when the world grew quiet, I allowed myself a private smile, remembering the day I had whispered to an empty room, "This time, everything changes," knowing with absolute certainty that this time it had.